I'd been put on an official Labour Party transphobe list with all my details. The Facebook group that started this transphobe list, Labour transphobes, was streeting in it.
I'm Jane,
Hi, I'm a Dolan. I'm a founder of Virago Women's Workshop, one of the founders.
And I'm Bex,
and this is
Insightful Sisters.
Hi Emma. Hello, this is so nice. We've interviewed lots of people, and I don't think I've known anyone quite as well as I've known you.
Well, I hope that helps me answer well anyway.
I think I really wanted to interview you because you were one of my really key people in getting into this. Bex was the other one, actually. Bex sort of pointed me towards what was going on. And then you get to a point where you've been reading the internet and thinking that you're going mad, and you contact the nearest possible group you can find, which in my case was Leeds Resistors. And you get invited in. I didn't realise really what was going on. You get invited in. You know how it is. You're asked to come into a city on a train, and once you get there, you'll get texted where you're going to go. It's all very cloak and dagger. And I met you, and well, thank you for that. That was it's been a really great way to get into this movement.
Well, you've certainly got into it as well. You've
So,
thrown yourself into it.
as we do.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us about you. You know, how did you become a feminist? What was it that brought you into feminism?
Well, I'd say this is probably becoming a feminist second time round because I was a self-declared feminist in my teens and quite stroppy with it. But then it just sort of seemed to just drift away with, family and work and children and etc., etc. And then I've got three things tipped me over the edge. Um, first one was probably, well, the first one was probably hearing about what was going on at my children's school. And a girl who was 13, I knew her foster mum, so she was in foster care. Um, and they were always talking about dysphoria and things like, and that's when I started hearing about the 72 genders nonsense. I completely passed me by. And then this 13-year-old girl, it was her birthday, and her birth mum bought her a binder for her birthday present. And then I started really looking into it.
When was this?
2017, or maybe 2016 actually, because it was very early on in 2017 that my second thing came along, and that was Jennifer James crowdfunder that popped up on my Facebook page. And I happily read it and thought, well, of course, if you're going to have a women only shortlist, then you've got to be a woman. So of course you can't have trans women being on it.
Do you just want to explain a little bit who Jennifer James was and
So she was part of she probably still is part of the Labour Party, and she set up a crowdfunder to take the Labour Party basically to task, possibly to court, I can't remember exactly, because they had positive discrimination for women because they were trying to get the 50-50 balance. But in the shortlists for candidates for new MPs or councillors, they were allowing men who identified as women to be counted as the women on the shortlist. So you could end up with, an entire male platform of candidates. Now, to be honest, I'm not particularly in favour of women-only shortlists for lots of other reasons. But I thought, well, if you're going to have one, they've at least got to be women, surely. So I signed it and I contributed and I shared it quite happily and innocently on all the Labour Facebook groups I was in, the local ones and the regional ones and the women only group.
I'm waiting to hear what happened next.
Well, I wonder what happened. I got kicked off all of them
Oh, wow.
after having a pylon on for most of them, or at least, well, yeah, a small pylon because there's not that many people in Labour local groups. But all of them, talking about this is meant to be a safe space, and how we don't have that kind of material shared in our group, and so it just got me thinking so much more about it because it was just such a shock. After having been thrown off the groups, other women had obviously seen my post, other women who did agree with me, and they were contacting me personally saying, "Oh, thank you for putting that on, but I would never have said that, we can't, but you can, it's not the right place to have that discussion." So it was the meeting up in private if you want to talk about gender ideology at all. So there was that kind of insanity. And actually, as a result of having contributed to the Jennifer James crowdfunder, I'd been put on an official Labour Party transphobe list with all my details, my address and phone number, my constituency. The Facebook group that started this transphobe list, Labour transphobes, had Wes Streeting in it, interestingly. So he's obviously moved on a bit from there.
Yeah, yeah. He says he has, doesn't he?
Yes, well, he obviously has. He's obviously given it some thought and taking things much more seriously. Angela Rayner was in that group. And I think Lily Madigan. Do you remember Lily Madigan?
Yes. Is he still around?
No, I don't think so. Last heard of facing sexual assault accusations in his university in Goldsmiths. Um, so there was the Labour Party thing because actually the Labour Party did me a big favour doing that because I'd woken up to find myself on this list, and I only knew because a Twitter group had started up. So I was put on a Twitter chat group with loads of women who I've met loads of them, most of them now, and there was Posy Parker, Jean Hatchett, Venice Allen, all sorts of feminist celebrities, and didn't have a clue who they were. So I could tell it was a big thing, and it was really upsetting. I found it really upsetting and really worrying because they were all taking it so seriously, that this breach of everyone's information and letting it out into the open. I was properly waiting for bricks to come through the window, and I was thinking, oh, what have I done? What have I done to the family? I've brought this danger to us. But as often happens with trans activism, nothing actually happened. Um, but at the so the Labour Party itself was really major in piquing me, I suppose, because it forced me into really looking at all sorts of things, how silencing, sharing information, um, all sorts of things. But then also at the same time, I had a third piquing story going on in the background. And that was finding out that a friend of mine with teenage children, her ex-partner had come out as a trans woman, changed his name, started wearing nail varnish and wearing girly things. And I was just infuriated that how dare he? I knew this bloke. I knew his children. I knew his wife. I know his ex-partner very well. And it was just infuriating. It was just such bollocks. There was absolutely no way of believing. I, it was just incredulous. And he was his reaction to coming out was gleeful. He was so happy and pleased with himself to be coming out as trans, without a thought for his children who were in high school. And he was locally, he was sort of quite well known as well. And he just couldn't wait a couple more years to keep his fetish indoors. So that there was a heady mix of, so that my peaking was a 13-year-old girl getting a binder when she was obviously already in foster care because of sexual abuse. The Labour Party having gone mental, and their members calling me Nazi and fascist and everything. And then a 50-year-old bloke deciding well, I won't say his name actually, but picking the girliest girly name he could and completely ignoring his children and his children's welfare. And it all kind of happened. I often say I kind of was really thrust into the world, and I did jump in both feet for, because it just this is all within a space of about a month.
Amazing. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it, can you?
Exactly. And I couldn't not do anything about it either.
No.
We were talking about how you need to meet people in real life to talk about things.
Yes, you do, yeah.
Well, that's where I was at. I just had to find some sanity.
You've been involved in various groups in Leeds, and I think you've set up various groups in Leeds. Do you want to tell us a bit about the Leeds feminist movement?
Yeah, well, our little bit of it, the rad femme, I suppose, or gender critical, whatever expression you might want to use. There's always been a group of us. It's none of the things I've been involved in have just been me. The first one that sort of got going was eventually got called Leeds Spinners. Now that started because I wanted to speak to people, and I didn't want to speak to people online. I just wanted to talk to them face to face, some real women, and say, what the hell, and because I was doubting, because I was still doing am I the bad guy? Are these poor people vulnerable? Are they really? So I needed to talk to somebody. And I went through Twitter, um, looking for anyone who I knew was in this discussion who sounded like they might be from Leeds or nearby or travelling distance, and messaged them to say, shall we meet up? And a couple did get in touch. And we did, and we met up for coffees and just to get everything off our chest. And so at that point, there were maybe three or four of us. And then I thought, right, we need to do something more than this. Let's do something. So at the time, and more on this later, at the time I had a studio space, an artist studio space at Sunnybank Mills in Farsley. And so I set up an event on Facebook for a banner making. I think I called it banner making and sedition workshop, and invited as many people as I could and shared that with as many people as I could. And then on the day of the workshop, we probably had about 7 women. And then that core of women became lead spinners. We're called lead spinners because we were making a banner. That was the sort of excuse to be meeting. And I wanted to put a name on the top, like a miner's banner will always have, the pit name. And my studio space was in the Spinning Mills studios. So we were lead spinners. And then it was great fun. We carried on meeting then monthly and got bigger and bigger. We were looking for a space more central in Leeds, so it was easier for other women to join us. So we used the John Lewis Community Hub, which you can hire for free if you're a community group. but we had to give a community sounding name and explain what we were doing. So we put ourselves down as a craft and embroidery group. And yeah, we've probably carried on meeting there for maybe over a year. So this is started in early 2018, and we carried on meeting in there first Sunday of the month. And sometimes there'd be 5 or 6 of us, but sometimes there'd be 20 odd, depending on what we were talking about and what we were discussing. And from there, we were making plans for all sorts of actions. It was very much about direct action, and doing something visible, doing something practical and concrete, lots of banner making and demonstrations, and just generally gathering as many women together as we could who didn't have anyone else to talk to about it all because they were working, or they were being called a Nazi if they did talk about single-sex spaces, which became the focus.
I know that there's so many actions we could talk about that Leeds have been involved in, and but we don't have so much time, and so it would perhaps be good to just talk about one in a little detail. And that I wondered if we could talk about the managed zone, because a lot of people don't really know what happened in Leeds with the managed zone, and I know that you were very involved in that. Your group was very involved in that.
Yeah, I mean, we'd started off just looking at women's rights, focused on single-sex spaces and definition of a woman. And we'd had some success, and we were feeling quite, kind of belligerent. So there was very much a feeling of, right, then we'll do Holbeck next. So Holbeck is an area in Leeds that had become the area where a lot, if not all, but a lot of the prostitution took place. And in their wisdom, Leeds City Council in 2014 decided that rather than trying to tackle the problem, the violence, the illegality, the punters, they would just make it legal in that one little area. They had a map and drew a zone on the map where between it had opening hours. I think they were 6 in the evening till 6 in the morning, something like that, where it was a free for all. There was no criminality involved at all, whatever was happening.
Were there any other places in the UK that had a managed zone at that point?
No, but Liverpool had started to look at it. So if it hadn't ended, that model could have spread around because lots of people were really in favour of it. It said it was much safer for the women and empowering for the women. So it had been in place. Again, this is something until thrown into this the insanity of the gender thing. I didn't even previously know about this managed zone. And we went to speak to the community group that was Save Our Eyes, they were called. They were the Holbeck and Beeston community group that were protesting about this project because it was ruining their neighbourhood, their safety, and for all sorts of reasons. So we, again, taking a really practical route one, nothing fancy. Let's make a massive banner. I think the first one was 17 meters long, and we got one of the developers, property developers, because it's a very industrial area, and there was buildings going up everywhere. It was a really dangerous area. One of the property developers let us have his fence that fences off a building site, so it was really prominent and also really easy to put up a huge banner. So we went and did that at 6 o'clock in the morning, a group of us, and it said City of Punters, in reference to we were coming up to City of Culture for Leeds. And so we had it hashtag City of Punters, hashtag Women Friendly Leeds, hashtag Child Friendly Leeds, all the things that we could be an irritant with, really. Um, and yeah, that got into the Yorkshire Post, and press were quite interested in that. It made a good photograph for them, obviously. And just it was a case of just trying to get more conversation and shed more light on what was happening, because plenty of people were like me and hadn't heard of the decision to make it a legal red light zone.
And of course, it isn't now. It's no longer the managed.
No, it isn't.
Do you think your actions help towards that decision?
Well, obviously, we like to think so. I think they did, in that it got the attention. It was another way of getting the attention of press, because we hung another huge one on the Holbeck viaduct over a major roundabout, just saying "women not for sale," and it was weighted down with little bags of coins. Each one had all together adding up to a fiver in coins, which sort of symbolised the price of a blowjob in the area. So I mean, we kind of hope it did some good, but there were other, in conjunction with Save Our Eyes campaign and other feminists who were campaigning against Holbeck. Um, I think I think we were a big irritant.
You created some discussion in the newspaper and in the council as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's what I just think that's what direct action is. That it's sort of like the most it can ask for, really. It's not going to on its own do something, but it can get something going.
You're never afraid to step up and get involved, and so maybe we could talk a bit about Sunnybank, because as an artist, a lot of your art is quite direct. I think it's interesting that you like the miners style banners. For anyone who doesn't know, Emma did the I think we've seen it in a lot of spaces. You call it the arse, don't you?
Yeah.
The arse banner. And it's a little tribute to Owen Jones, I think, is it?
Yeah, so it says wrong side of history, my arse. Well, it was just, there was a phrase that was used so much, particularly by him, claiming to be on the right side of history, and we were all on the wrong side of history. And it was such a pathetic, sort of uh, glib nonsense of a phrase to use. I just like the sticking my arse on the end of it, like I was what's his name, Royal in the royal family. No, this has everything, my arse. But I wanted it to be quite beautiful and intricate, and that's why I wanted it to have a feel of um, solid, sensible, proper, no nonsense.
Yeah, left wing politics.
Exactly, exactly. So there's nods to that kind of styling.
Was it the arse banner that people complained about at Sunnybank?
It wasn't that, weirdly, it wasn't that specifically. That was early days. So this Arse was made in 2018, and I didn't actually leave Sunnybank till 2021. So I was there for 3 years doing all this stuff. And obviously, my other studio holders had seen all the banners I'd done. Um, Oh, it's an artist studios. At the time we had about, I think we had 13 studios. It's now there's much more little individual units where artists just have their own space to do whatever they want, do their practice. And at the time, one end of it was open plan with huge long tables that were just crying out to have massive banners painted on them. So all the different things I'd been doing, or other women had been doing them with me, all the studio holders had seen. It wasn't actually our spanner. No, I think the thing that started off the kerfuffle at Sunnybank was actually I had a stack of business cards that I'd had made in 2018 to take down to a meeting at the House of Lords, where Julia Long was speaking, and Sheila Jeffries. I'd made a series of cards, and the I had a stack of them that were the dictionary definition of a woman. And I had a stack of them on my cocktail bar, which was my barrier for my space into the public space. I had a little cocktail bar. And then one day I wasn't in the studio. An art practitioner brought in a group of her students. She brought them for a tour of the studio to see a professional working artist studio, and a couple of them who identified themselves as being neither male nor female, non-binary, saw the cards, felt unsafe in the studios, in their cohort of friends with their tutor. A little business card with the definition of a woman on it had made them feel unsafe. And from that, it spiraled with complaints coming from a friend of theirs who decided to email Sunnybank Mills owners to inform them.
So he took you on as a sort of challenge to get rid of, didn't he?
Yeah, I think it was my friends have been made to feel unsafe. How dare this person say these things? He was very, very angry and caused a big nuisance. I emailed and complained about me, and then the knock-on effect of that was other studio holders were then brought into it as well. There was a split, really. Some of them agreeing that a lot of my work was offensive. Some of them not agreeing at all. One thing led to another, and eventually in 2021, I was evicted from the studios that I'd been in for. By that time, I'd been in them for 7 years and had been one of the founder members of the studios when it first set up, and it was very upsetting. You find out who your friends are, uh, and yeah, it was upsetting and infuriating. It's absolutely incandescent that I'd been evicted because of someone feeling unsafe by a definition of what a woman is. It's absolute madness.
So that whole terrible time, and it must have been awful. I mean, you're downplaying what it felt like, but to be rejected like that by people that you'd worked alongside for 7 years must have been really devastating.
Really frustrating, but also at the same time understanding completely why they didn't want to stick their head up above the parapet as well.
Yeah. Did you get the same thing as you did with the Labour Party stuff? Did you get people coming to you privately?
Yes, which I was pleased with. I was really glad of that, and a couple of studio holders were openly in helping me, and one even coming to the meeting with the owners for me to support. So it was, yeah. I mean, at the time, yes, it was a shocking experience because it was, but mainly angering, I think.
Yeah, yeah. We don't, I mean, artists and cancellation is a huge issue, isn't it? Because so many of you work for yourselves, or if you don't work for yourselves, then you might work on a by project basis for councils and charities. And those things now are completely tied to inclusivity funding. So if you are doing anything for women only, that's a difficulty. You left Sunnybank and you immediately set up Virago. I mean, I think anger sometimes can inspire us, can't it, to do great things.
Yes, we had the keys for Virago before I'd actually packed up and left Sunnybank because I did a final open day there. The owners, who I have to say, I think they grudgingly got rid of me. I don't know. They had their reasons, money mainly. But they let me stay for the final open studios. So I was still at Sunnybank when we took on the lease for Virago. Yes.
So tell us a bit about Virago. I know Bex has got more questions on Virago in a moment, but just take us through the front door and how you got there.
Well, it did actually start, the idea, it started more from a let's set up a women's art space with some women only studios so that we would be in charge of who we let in the door and who we didn't. We would be in charge of, um, we wouldn't have anyone telling any of the artists in there what work they could and couldn't display or could and couldn't make. And so that's a sort of studio quest came about, and we were looking at trying to look for suitable spaces. But for what we needed to do, we needed quite a big space, and big spaces are very, very expensive and also in not very easy to get to places. Lots of retail, light industrial units were available, but no one would go there, and just hard for anyone who didn't drive to get there. And so we were just really doing property searches constantly, and then we saw the advert and Rightmove or something for the building in Virago. And when we went to see it, we loved it so much. Kind of it said what we the group, I think there were 3 or 4 of us looking at it. And it obviously wasn't big enough for an artist studios for any more than 3 or 4 people. So it wouldn't have we wouldn't have covered the rent, ironically. So we decided to let's do a women's centre instead. So broaden the use of it because it is in such a brilliant spot. It's so central on all the such good public transport, right in the hotbed of student activity. If we wanted to do any kind of activist activity, it was a good place to be. And also it was perfect for women coming to the courses we would run, because they could actually get there. So kind of the idea of Virago evolved from the space, as well as the space inspiring us to do lots of all the different things we did.
I love it. It's just a wonderful, wonderful space, and we've got a lot to thank Virago for because we started doing interviews at Virago or conversations with at Virago, and then took it here. So it seems a good point to pass over to Bex because I know she's got some questions about Virago as well, and I don't want to hog all your time.
I guess we're sort of at the point now where you've sort of opened the door of Virago, as Jane put it. What was the reception or the response to Virago opening at the time?
Well, one of excitement from women who thought it was a great idea and loved it and wanted to see what was going to happen. But unfortunately, one of a bit of ambivalence when we very first started. But to be honest, when we first opened, we were expecting the response to be damage or protests or attacks or something, with the sort of tone of discussion about single sex spaces on social media is so vicious that for the first couple of events, I think we were quite worried about what was going to actually physically happen to us. And we had things in place what to do if you're on your own in Virago, or we started making sure there was always 2 of us in there. so no one's running a course on their own. They've got some sort of backup if anything was to happen. And to be honest, nothing actually ever did, apart from a couple of little stickers on our windows. But generally, the reaction was, what a great idea. But also, a lot of women I found, obviously younger, much younger than me and some of the others in the management team, hadn't even experienced that kind of atmosphere before, hadn't experienced a place that you knew was just going to be women and it was just women, and that it was just a given. That they'd never been to a women-only disco or a consciousness raising group, and I'd never been to one of those, but I'd heard about them and read about them. And so there was a sort of like an amazement that you can actually do that. And actually, looking back on it all, there was no problem in us providing a single sex space. There was a big fear about it, and I can see why that fear would put other people off maybe trying to set up a similar thing themselves. But actually, we were blacklisted from lots of places, and had opportunities taken away from us, and couldn't advertise to the same degree that other community groups, because we are a CIC. We couldn't take up opportunities to advertise as much because we were still seen as right-wing Nazis by all the inclusive groups.
Let's talk about that. So, I mean, well, you've sort of spoken about the concerns that you had over hostility, and it's obviously quite shocking that you would have to sort of consider the safety of women being there alone, not from right wing or, you know, anti-feminist men, but from left wing or people that claim to be left wing. And issues around funding and advertising, you know, what were the hidden challenges that maybe you couldn't have predicted?
Well, funding was the main one, and I think, or maybe more than funding, actually, was partnerships with other groups, other women's groups. There's loads of women's groups in Leeds that are funded by Leeds City Council. We had no intention of trying to get funding from Leeds City Council for anything, or any approval or sponsorship or anything. But the Women's Lives Matter, or Women's Health Matters at the time, an umbrella group of 11 different women's groups, and they were, when we first started, they were, to us, that they were obvious possible partners, or groups who may want to run some of their events at our venue, so they'd have a wider scope across Leeds. Or we were hoping to put on special craft workshops or support groups, or all the things we were wanting to do and offer them to the women of Leeds. We soon found that those groups couldn't work with us. It's sort of since improved a tiny little bit. We were in consultation with a group looking into whether Leeds did in fact need a women's centre and what that would look like, and some single sex sessions had actually been set up after lots of women that came to the consultation expressed an interest in it. Now, they were actually closed down in the end, and they were cancelled because, again, the more inclusive established community groups put a stop to it. They did just sort of we were meddling and interfering and trying to spread our hate across the city. So I think a lot of the challenges that we faced as Virago when we started to put events on, to be honest, if we'd have planned it out a little bit better before we started. But as I was saying to Jane earlier, there was a lot of anger and bit of kind of right then, if we're not allowed to say what we want to say, we'll put on our own space, we'll make our own place, we'll have our own building where we can't be stopped. Kind of jumped into that two-footed without looking into the practicalities, the business plan, the strengths and weaknesses and all of that kind of thing. And I think probably if we had looked into it all and done some market research on what groups would actually deal with us, would the community library over the road from us actually let us put our leaflets in there or not? If we'd looked into that and found out how rejected we were going to be and how difficult it was going to be, certainly to cover the rent as well, we might have backed out and not done it. We might not have signed the lease in the first place. So in some ways, it was a reckless move to set up Virago without taking into consideration all the problems we were going to face. But if we had, we wouldn't have set up. So
Glad then that you didn't research too thoroughly. So tell us about that process as well, where, like you say, you sort of realise that you're on your own a little bit, and the other groups or the library or different organisations that you had hoped would maybe sort of link in with you didn't. But you've opened this space, and you've opened this space for a reason, because you sort of want a space where you can express yourself freely and define yourself sort of freely. How did you go about doing that? How did you sort of define what you were there to offer and what you wanted to give women?
Well, I can remember the meeting vividly. We probably been in there a year or so when we really got to grips with, right, what's our mission? What's our purpose? We've been putting on lots of random events, and which were all great, and random workshops, which were all great. But when we sat down and thought, right, this is what we want to do. We want to prioritize women's spaces and make them a real thing again, and show that they can be, and show that we can do that. So we looked at what was going to be popular and draw women in who maybe hadn't come for the feminism, they were going to come for the watercolor classes. But then also put on things that were for women who wanted to come, and like the conversation evenings, wanted to come and listen to proper serious discussion, but in an environment where they could be relaxed. And most of our events would turn into a bit of a social afterwards as well, and so they could network as well, and in a relaxed atmosphere. So we really tried to offer a range of things for lots of different women. I just want to say, by this point, we had almost a proper grown-up kind of management team, that sort of a business plan and that kind of thing. And the women that supported and helped us evolve and set up a membership program, a membership scheme and a supporters scheme, they were absolutely invaluable. We could have closed 2 years ago if some women had all voluntary. Everyone who put any work into Virago was voluntary, and some of the women worked so hard and gave so much time and their skills to us. Absolutely fantastic. And we did really survive by being supported by our membership scheme. Women who wanted to support us or join us because they wanted to use our facilities and they were going to get their money's worth out of it. They would get the workshops and the socials and one thing and another, or women from nowhere near Leeds and they knew they were never going to be able to get to any event, but they wanted it to work. They wanted it to be there. One of our management team would always talk about how we wanted Virago to be a beacon of a beacon. It sounds really over the top, but a beacon of light a beacon of what is possible if you just get together and just do it. Just jump in and do it.
I think that's a really nice way to define it as, a beacon. And like you sort of say, having that balance where you're providing a space for feminists or for gender critical women that want a space where they can openly discuss and feel safe and secure, and also a space for women who, as I say, just want to craft and just want to experience, because it was a lovely experience to walk through Virago's doors for the first time. You could just feel the presence of women in all of the features of the room, in the artwork and in the sort of conversation, in the topics that came up, in the events that were planned. For women who are sort of in a situation where they would like to do something similar, do you have advice for them that, if you could go back, you wish you'd been able to tell yourself?
That's a tricky one because, like I say, we jumped in, and if I had looked into it too much, would I have jumped in? I'm not sure. But actually, I think the main thing is, yes, it's possible to set up something like that. The perceived threats we were going to get or the worries we had didn't materialize. It was fine. Everyone had a great time, and we did some really important workshops and discussions. And I think all it really takes is a group. Definitely have a group of women around you. Absolutely. But all it takes really is a group of women who want it to happen in a space. It doesn't have to be as lovely and featureful and characterful as Virago is. And it doesn't have to be in the epicenter of the lefty student world and hipsterville and all that kind of thing. It can be anywhere women can get to, or just set up groups in not village halls, but just hire a space and put on a women only event. It's possible. It doesn't. We've had loads of things. We've held them in pubs in town, where we got some shitty looks from bar staff, but we had a great night. This is a Virago event with Elaine Miller, and I think. I wouldn't dream of giving any practical advice because I'm not a practical person at all. But as a hopeful advice, just do it because it's coming. It's almost like we're so, we're not allowed to say that. We can't say that. We'll probably get shut down. We'll probably well, we can say it, and you can, and it's so much more easier now as well to say yes, we're women only, we're single sex. You can only come in here if you're female. There's no pussyfooting around with, well, none of the sort of niceties or directing them to other more inclusive places. It's just sort of straightforward. We are a single sex space, and that's fine. We are allowed to be. So not really advice, encouragement, really. Just do it.
So Virago, the physical space, is now closing, unfortunately. But there are plans for the future, aren't there? So what's next?
So yes, we are leaving this venue, the one in Headingley. There may be another venue in the future. The immediate future is to put on events as and when we want them. So the next time we want conversations, we'll just hire another space, do it somewhere else. It won't be the same. There's no way it can be the same, because the glory of the place was that it was single sex, and we knew there was no, apart from the landlord, no men ever came in there. But we can still hold the events, and the events are absolutely gorgeous. I believe you were there when Julia Long came. And did you come to the Save Women's Sports one as well? We've had some absolute crackers, and it's just that kind of event we can put on anywhere, because now because we're not afraid. We're not afraid of thinking, oh, we can't because we're women only. Oh no, what are they going to say? Well, they can't say anything. You can just do it. A few things are actually carrying on regularly as well. We've got a beloved art club that's been going almost as long as Virago. It was the first thing to start, and it's gone all the way through. And we're hiring another room in a community centre in Headingley, have allowed us in. And that's going to be great. So that will continue. And some of the art workshops, again, will continue in the suitable venue for each event. I flit between thinking there's always going to be another permanent venue somewhere. I still have the property search alerts on my phone coming up and telling me when there's another suitable property in the price range. But I think we're going to have a bit of a rest. All the team will have a bit of a rest, and then I don't think it'll be long before we want to put on certainly another conversations and start running other things. And of course, we can, with not having the venue to maintain and keep up, we're freed up for being involved in things nationally as well, and being, traveling around a lot more than most of us did used to go around to all the big meetings and demos and things. And we can now do that because we're not going to have to be in Headingley every weekend. So lots of things we still want to be involved in.
So watch this space then.
Yes, literally, watch out for another space. Yeah.
For women who've been listening and who would like to get involved or want to learn more, where can they start? What can they do?
Our website is there, viragowomensworkshop.co.uk. We're across all social media platforms for the updates of what we're doing. You can contact us on any of those. There's lots of classic Virago things still to come. So certainly keep an eye out on social media for the details of that.
Excellent. So we come to our last question, which we ask every episode, and that is for your woman of the moment, or a woman whose voice you'd like to uplift and highlight.
Well, I'm going to cheat and give you a group of individual women. I'm going to say Chandy Charlton. I'll name them first and then I'll explain who they are. Chandy Charlton, Emma Simpson, Kath Allen, and Catherine Welford. They are at present, the management team of Virago, other women have been involved along the way, but I'll just stick to naming 4 for now. They have just worked so hard and been so positive and been so angry and been so determined, and they're all amazing.
Excellent women, yeah, and such hard work to make such an incredible space. Thank you so much for talking to us. I mean, this has been a lovely interview. It's bittersweet because I'll miss the Virago space, but I will be watching closely, and I'm sure we all will, to see what comes next and to make sure that we keep being involved in any way we can.
Well, thank you for letting me talk about it all.
It's been so inspirational. I mean, I hope people will listen and think, oh yeah, we could do our own version of Virago in our own town or our own city.
Thank you for speaking to us, and thank you for listening for this long. We hope that you've really enjoyed this episode, and if so, please do like, share, comment, subscribe, and we really, really hope to see you in future episodes too.